Hey there! In this video I'm going to teach you how to edit animated logo templates in Photoshop. I will show you how to change the colors and the text and how to change parts of the animation. So let's dig in. Today we are going to work on this animated logo template, which is part of one of my products, but in this case I made it freely available for you so that you can practice all the tricks that I teach you here in this video. The first thing you have to do is to open up the timeline panel. This is where you will see how the template is animated. So in Photoshop, we go to Windows and we make sure that timeline has a check mark. The timeline panel opens up at the bottom and I pull it up a little bit. My layers here on the layer panel are mostly grouped so that I can keep them organized. But if I open up a grouping here or on the timeline panel, you will see that it has many elements. So for example, here on the timeline panel, here's the flower 1. I click on it, and in the meantime, on the layer panel, flower 1 also is selected. We also have this slider here. If we move it, we can go through the animation that was prepared in this template. As you can see, there are the frame numbers. Every 30 frame is 1 second. So 30 frames, 1 second, another 30 frames, 2 seconds, and so on until we get to the end of the animation at 9 seconds. Basically, we can only see the elements that are at the slider at that moment. So here, if we go down, we can only see the frame, the left side and the right side. And there's slight changes happening here. And then we start to see the stem of the flower icon that comes up. So if we go up, here is the stem. And then the first flower bud appears at 1 second, 20 frames, and so on. So if you want something to appear sooner, you have to make sure that that given layer is pulled earlier. You can just grab it and just pull it to the frame where you want it to appear. And as we go through, you see that there are more and more layers joining in until everything is visible. Then the whole icon moves to the left, the frame opens up, and we get the final element, which is the text. So this is how this animation looks like. Now let's see how to change the colors first, because you want to change the colors to fit your brand. Okay, so the first elements that I want to change are the leaves. And if you go here, you will see that each of the elements in this logo symbol has their own layer, and they are all turned into smart objects. The reason why I can't leave them as regular layers or shape layers is that those have very limited animation abilities. So you can't animate them in as many ways as you can do so with smart objects. So let's change the color of the leaves. First off, I go to leaf 1, I click on it. It's highlighted here on the layer panel and also highlighted here on the timeline panel. But here on the layer panel, I double click on the thumbnail of the layer. This opens up the smart object in a new tab. Zoom in a bit. Open up here on the layers panel the grouping. I have a stem part and a leaf part. I only want to change the color of the leaf. So this is shape layer, as you can see. So I can just double click on it and change the color. This is the color that I want to make it. Or of course you can add your values here for the RGB, CMYK or the hex. I showed these methods earlier in my previous blog post. I also showed there many other ways how to change the colors on layers, but this was the easiest when you change colors on shape layers. So we just have to go and save it, close the tab, and then as you can see this leaf changed color. We go to the next one, open it up and change the color. Save it with Command S or Control S, and we go back to the original file. This is how easy it is to change the colors in these logos. So I just go ahead and change all of them, and then we return to see how to change the text. These are my edited colors. So now let's change the text. I have to move the time slider to that time when the text is visible. Here's the text, and just type in my own. I won't move it right now, although I'm not satisfied with the distance, because here there's a smaller distance between the logo symbol and the text, and here's a little bit bigger. The reason I don't move it, because if I do any movement on this layer, it might get into the animation and just messes it up. So I will do that when we discuss how to make changes in the animation. Also, don't forget that you can edit all features of your text if you open up the character panel, the same way as I showed you in my earlier videos. So I just press T to get the type tool, highlight it, and make it lowercase, the distance 200 and the size a bit bigger. I just clicked on the check mark to save it, and as I said, I won't move it yet. I will center it a bit later. Now let me show you on the timeline panel what describes the animations and what can you change to change the animation effects. So I just go to the beginning, and the first change happens here on the frame, the right frame part. So it just starts to get narrower, and at the beginning it's joined with the left frame, but at the end of the animation there's two separate parts, the left part and the right part. So I just go and find the frame left and frame right. As you can see, the frame right has a mask on it. And actually, it's not the frame that we are moving. I move the mask. If I would click on the mask here, this is the mask that I'm moving. So here it's a bit more to the left, and a few frames later it's more to the right, and that makes the right part of the frame getting narrower. So I open up my group and go here to the frame right, and I just click on this little arrow here to open up more information. And as you can see, there's layer mask position, layer mask enabling. There's also transform opacity and style. So here at the beginning, you see a little mark symbol that marks the starting position of the layer mask. Its position right now is here. This is where the mask is positioned. Then we get to 1 second, and at 1 second the position is here. Between the two, Photoshop makes the work for you and just calculates where the mask has to be between these two end positions. So the start position and the end position is the two things that you have to define. The next thing that happens in the animation is that the stem appears and starts to grow. So if we go up to the stem, and open it up here, you see that it's not visible here. We don't have the layer here. It gets visible at 1 second. And at 1 second, it's minuscule. It has a transformation setup, and I set it up to be just 0.46% big. So it's this tiny. You see that little dot? If I zoom in, really zoom in, this little dot is that part of the symbol, the stem. And when we move to 1 second 20 frames, it's at 100%. So if you want to change this, you just go here, press Ctrl T, we are at the start, and you can decide that you want to make it bigger. Let's say 55%, and move it here. In this case, when the animation starts, the stem would appear here in the right side and would slide into the middle in between the frames and grow from 55% to 100%. For now, I just redo this change. But this is how you make animations. You define the start state, you define the end state, and you make changes between the two. You can change the transformation, so the size, the rotation, the position, and you can change the opacity, the style. And if you have a mask on that layer, you can change the position of the mask too. So let's go now to the time when the text appears. You see, till then the same thing happens as with the stem. When a flower or a leaf appears, they start at a very tiny size, and then they grow up to their 100% size. Then the whole object, so everything gets transformed, positioned to the left, and the right side opens up. There's also a mask on the text that gets moved, So at the beginning we can't see the text, but then as the mask moves away, it's revealed. So now we have to change the position of the text. I go on the layer and make sure that my little T icon is highlighted and not the mask, because if this is highlighted, then I will move the mask and not the text itself, and that will change this animation here, because here, as you can see, I have my layer mask position at a setting, a start setting, then I have it in a new setting. I selected the text, and just with my arrows on my keyboard I move it to the right position. I don't have to move it much, I just moved it a little bit down and a little bit to the right. But what's important is that I shouldn't have any little marks on my transformation line. If I get a mark here, I have to delete it. Just click on it and delete, because I don't want to play with the position. So we changed the colors, we changed the text, and I showed you what shows you where an animation or transformation starts, where it goes, and how you can change it. Now I'm going to show you some additional things that you can add to your animation. And you can find these here on this little icon. These are effects, transitioning effects. You open it up and you will find fade, crossfade, fade with black, fade with white, and fade with color. So for example, if you want to fade this text out at the end of your animation, you just drag and drop the fade here at the end of your text layer. This little triangle is added. You can make it shorter in duration or longer. And this is what it does. You come here in your animation and the text starts to fade out. If I make it shorter, then the whole thing happens in a shorter period of time. And if you want to get rid of it, just click on it, make sure that it's selected with a little very fine black frame around it, just press delete and you deleted it. You can also add different fades. So for example, if your background is black, you wouldn't add fade, maybe you would add fade with black, and then your text would fade into a black color. So when you're done with your changes, you can review your animation. I just zoom out. Maybe make the timeline panel a bit shorter and just press play. Sometimes in this preview the animation can be a bit longer, a bit jagged. It's because not all of the parts loaded in. So I always click on this little icon here, this gear icon, and turn on the loop feature. So the playback, the animation will go in a loop in my preview. So that helps Photoshop to load in everything after a few loops. I show you here. Just make sure to check this loop playback. So maybe at the beginning it's a little bit weird, the animation, but after 3 loops it will show it correctly. So if we are satisfied with the animation, then I go to here to this little menu to export it. I go here down to render video, And here on this render video panel, I can choose the file name, select the folder, and set up the format. I like to keep it at H.264. This is good for YouTube and on high quality, but of course you can go down here and choose YouTube HD or whatever you were making your recording your videos in. And then you just click render. I won't do it now because it will kill my computer to render at the same time as I'm recording my screen. But you just click render and it will render it into an MP4 file. I hope you like this video and it helped you understand that animating in Photoshop is not difficult at all. Let me know if you would like to see a more in-depth video about Photoshop animation, because we haven't gone through everything that can be done in Photoshop. There's a lot more, it's just not so important for logo templates. But I would be glad to do that video for you. In the meantime, don't forget that there's a freebie for this blog post. If you scroll down and click on the image below, you will get this animated template for free. See you next week. Bye for now.